I think there's a practical reason for a lot of this. We've talked about Thucydides Trap on the show quite a bit. Are you familiar with the concept?
I'm not. No, explain it.
Whenever a rising economic power is on the verge of supplanting the dominant power, war breaks out.
Okay.
I say whenever, but it's a tendency towards. So historians often say the last 16 examples of an economic power supplanting the greater, 12 instances led to war. So the idea is, why is it that, I don't know, Joe Biden is doing these deals and flying to China and working these deals with China? China is expected to overtake the United States very soon.
Yeah.
It was delayed because of COVID. Interesting about that. It was delayed because of COVID. And
you mean the overtake?
The overtake. China, I'm sorry, actually, it might have been sped up by
I thought it would have been sped up because China continued to grow.
Right,
in the US.
I think it was sped up by it. But think about what this means. The U.S. is eroding from within. You've got the January 6th committee, for instance, actively trying. So Eric Swalwell was asked about this. He was asked about, isn't what he's doing causing more division? And he said something that was like just inane, like, well, we have to do it or something like that. So yeah, when they lie and escalate, Jussie Smollett, Russiagate, Ukrainegate, all of that stuff, just lie. They are inflaming tensions. When they go after kids and divert them, or should I say subvert their development, and then cause identity crises, give them drugs, destroying the next generation is going to cripple the United States. And I have to wonder, I'm not saying it's intentional, but it is fortuitous for those who fear Thucydides Trap, because the U.S. is falling as fast as China is rising. China may actually take over the world, the global economy, without the U.S. ever having an opportunity to engage in war. So if you think about the Council on Foreign Relations, I think it was, they have on their website the liberal world order and why it was created. Anybody who's arguing for the creation of a new world order in the wake of the liberal world order, and I don't mean the new world order conspiracy, I mean the literal term, a world order and a new version of it, it would be beneficial to avoid a third world war with China. How would you do that? Destroying the economy of the United States and the upcoming generation to make sure that they can't ever actually engage in conflict. There's a story I saw recently where there's like a destroyer that had like 3 captains rotate in and out so quickly because they were being fired and demoted. The U.S. military can't recruit at all anymore.
So where is this coming from?
No idea. But I will.
Is this internal? Is this external manipulation?
Both maybe.
That's the thing I find so weird. It's like this social and cultural domestic harikiri, right? Like that. It's so odd to me. I mean, the UK is doing the same things. Many Western countries are. I think the US is kind of sadly leading the charge in this and exporting a lot of bad ideas. But there's really a lot of people have noticed that in the past, I want to say 7 to 8 years in particular, a lot of this is the inversion has really accelerated. And so much of the stuff that we talk about and so many of these issues are things that it would literally, as recently as a decade ago, it would have seemed completely absurd for them to even be debates or conversations. And there's something really weird going on.
I do want to point out, just a quick shout out to Joe Spinella on the super chat, who mentioned, surely you haven't seen the tanks protecting Chinese banks because China's economy is like imploding. True point. Fair point. I'm not saying that China is coming out unscathed. It may be a global economic collapse. The whole system is just imploding for whatever reason.
You saw with the Trans-Pacific Partnership in 2010, that was the first warning sign for me. Barack Obama signed on, and there's this thing called the Investor-State Dispute Settlement Clause in the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal that would have given Malaysian oil corporations the power to sue the United States government, and the taxpayers would have to pay the bill if they thought that Americans were discriminating against their oil companies and didn't want to buy their oil. Then they could sue us. And it was giving corporations insane power over American citizens. And Obama was on it. He didn't know or he didn't care.
And Trump shut it down.
Trump shut it down like the
right
third
away.
day he was in office or the second day he was in office. But that they were trying to do that is very overtly transferring power from the citizen American democracy, republicanism, to corporatism.
Yeah, dude, look at the last 2.5 years. Like, seriously? I mean, how have all these countries in a very coordinated fashion? I mean, it's one thing if one country goes nuts, but it's literally been UK, Canada, every country in Western Europe, pretty much, except Sweden, USA, New Zealand.
What was it? World War I? You had the three countries, they were cousins with each other. It was like France, who was it? Germany and who else or something like that?
Germany, Austria. I don't know.
I don't remember. But it was like these three leaders who go to war with each other were cousins. It's like they're all related to each other. That's just that. I'm not surprised by any of that. Powerful.
I think we're witnessing a controlled demolition, man.
You think they're intentionally destroying the economy and...
Dude, everything that people are freaking out with right now with the economy, supply chains, inflation.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
It was all completely predictable and predicted by myself and other so-called conspiracy theorists. Like when all of this stuff started, it was very predictable and very obvious.
I got evidence for you.
Okay.
So we'll call it circumstantial evidence and we'll call it logic.
Okay.
So Ukraine-Russia war, right? Mm-hmm. Invasion of Ukraine. Fertilizer from Russia not getting exported. U.S. is in trouble. Mm-hmm. Ukraine and Russia are exporting enough wheat. They can't produce any. There's a war going on. They can't produce as much. Global famine. You've heard them talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Then why in Europe are they telling farmers in Ireland and the Netherlands to stop farming?
And the UK.
And the UK. Why are they telling these farmers in these countries, stop farming right now?
Controlled demolition.
But hold on. The same people who are telling us that there is going to be a global famine are also telling their farmers to stop farming. Mm-hmm. That's very strange, isn't it? I mean, they're saying, famine's coming, you better stop farming or else. It's like, okay, do you want people to, like, run out of food?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the thing is, and it's impossible to not be a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist these days after the past several years if you are just interested in thinking. But they've created this, right? If people who are in power or people in corporate media and so on, so-called public health officials and the experts which we keep hearing about, if they refuse to be honest and they just continue to lie and to gaslight and to shift goalposts for years and years and years on end, like every single day, they're just lying to people, then naturally you are going to have people trying to work out, wait, what is going on? This narrative is not making sense. This is not logical. This is not rational. This is not based in science. It's not based in economics, nothing. What is going on? It makes people wonder.
Can we stop it?
I think people always ultimately have the power.
We can resist the starvation by growing local food.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. My question is, if we are in a controlled demolition, do you think it's possible that people reverse course and stop this?
Yes, it's always possible. I don't think this is the first time being here in history.
By voting for Trump is what you're saying.
MAGA. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that this is the first or even close to the worst thing that humanity has faced on any level. I think it's important to always maintain a sense of gratitude and perspective, both historically and geographically. And I think there's a lot of real stuff to be very, very concerned about. But in terms of my optimism, I mean, you look at history and, man, there's countless examples of very, very dark times where I'm sure people in certain countries or across just thought, you know what, this is a wrap. This is the end. Like, this is a freaking nightmare. And people have always come out on the end of it thus far, right? Our species is still going. There's more of us than ever before. So I think one thing that people often forget, though, is that history is not finished, right?
It never is.
No, we're living through the history of the future, right? I'm sure if you go back to 1910s and you talk to people in Europe or in America or whatever, I'm pretty sure they thought that they were very advanced and they were past all the war and the chaos and the famine and the genocides. You know, we're cool. We're advanced. We're smart. We're moral. We're decent people. And then, boom, World War I, boom, World War II, right? That would not have been remotely predictable.
Well, what's happening now? They say that there's overpopulation, climate change from too much pollution. I say, okay. They say we got to have late-term abortions. Then they say we also got to give drugs to children that will sterilize them. And I'm like, the end result of that is just the left. Conservatives aren't engaging in that for the most part. They'll be brought down by it to a certain degree, but not completely. And so I wonder about this. The end result, the strong survive. If there's an artificial flood or a natural flood, whatever you want to call it, some emergency, be it an economic crisis, an environmental crisis, or a cultural crisis, in the end, the strong survive.
Well, it's the adaptable that survive. The strong may starve.
It's also the people. It's the people who show up for it. The future will go to those who show up for it.
So if I'm sitting here saying to everybody who's watching this show, and you are as well, like, hey, it feels like there's a collapse happening, and it may be on purpose. The best case, the best evidence, in my opinion, is that they're claiming a global famine is coming while telling farmers to stop farming. That's indicative of they're intentionally trying to starve people.
It reminds me of
so my point is, if you hear that, you had 2 years advance notice watching my show, if you haven't for that long, to, I don't know, move out of the cities, get a small piece of land where you can grow enough food for your family, or to buy emergency food and start preparing for what may be coming. But I'll stress it again. When the powers that be scream in your face for 2 years a food shortage is coming, then you actively see them shooting. A cop shot a live bullet at farmers because they want them to stop farming. It's like, okay.
Was that in the Netherlands?
In the Netherlands. Yeah. Like, they're willing to kill these farmers to shut down their protest. Yo, they're telling you they are not going to let you have food. Maybe you should plan for that.
It may be like a misdirected intention. Like, I keep thinking about Mao's Great Leap Forward in the Communist Chinese Revolution of what was the 1960s. And he moved all these farmers off the farms and then gave like all these people from the cities, he moved them out to the farms. Like, now you're in the farm, but they didn't know how to farm. So a bunch of people starved. Maybe it was intentional. I don't know.
Stalin did the same.
Yeah, you starve the resistance and then you have less resistance. So if they think there's an overpopulation issue and they want a slower growth of population, what would be a good way to do that?
Dude,
not a slower growth. They want a depletion of it. Well, and the people who are imposing this so-called controlled demolition are certainly going to survive the famine, civil unrest, whatever happens. And then the so-called like strong of, you know,
the MAGA
people watching this show who do what the things that you just listed are also going to survive it. Then what happens?
MAGA people are the future. Is that it?
I don't think anyone's overtly said they want less people.
Yes.
People keep saying they want to slow the growth.
Of course they wouldn't overtly
say that. That's not true. Bill Gates wrote an article about it saying that there is way too many poor people being born in Africa, and that's what we got to stop.
There's a lot of
antinatalism,
and it's not new. Antinatalism has been running for decades.
But to your point, if we're talking, your point about the strong surviving, when there's no food, it's the people in cities who suffer. The people who live out in the countryside, like, yo, you drive up the mountain, everyone has chickens. Like, to them, it's, and people who are listening to this who live in the country know exactly what this is better than I do because they've been doing it their whole lives. It's like you wake up in the morning and get eggs from the chicken. It's no big deal. Growing up in the city, you go to the supermarket to get your bleached eggs. Now, if there's a food shortage, the people who have their own chickens don't got to worry about it. Y'all, you're going to be eating cockroaches and bugs and crickets. I got like 30, 40 chickens out there.
Oh, you'll be.
They're pushing the insects hard.
They've been
pushing that one for years.
The chickens are going to eat the crickets, and I'm going to eat the chickens.
That's the way to go. But chickens smell and they pollute the environment, so not everyone can have them, unfortunately.
No, chickens, when they poop, we don't do it properly because we are still living in this luxury. What you do is Thomas Massey, man, that guy's a genius. He has something called the Klux capacitor. It's a solar capacitor that charges up and then releases a charge, pulling a chicken coop about an inch. So all day, the chicken's coop moves, and the chickens poop in the grass. And he said, the trail of grass behind the chicken coop is lush and fertile.
Oh, wow.
Because the chickens are actively eating the bugs in the grass and then fertilizing the soil. So it's a perfect cycle. Brilliant.
Wow.
What you do when the chickens poop, we've got these big mounds because we did construction. And it's crazy how big and tall the wild shrubbery and grasses have grown on it because it was just a huge pile of chicken crap.
It is impressive. I looked up at it and saw it for the first time after it was just a little. That was wild.
Yeah, well, it was two big mounds of chicken crap. And it's like, I think what happens is the nitrogen escaped from it and then it's fertile and then the plants just go nuts.
I'm with you, Zuby. I think all you guys actually kind of been touching on this, that if they want a slower population growth or less people, one of the two, and they want less carbon in the atmosphere, that they want, we're running out of food, but they want the farmers to stop farming. It feels like they want to starve a segment of the population to propel, and these people that want it must be insulated from that in some way.
I think it's because they know that not the entire globe can enjoy the first world luxuries that a lot of us enjoy. And now their version of preparing for that prospect as the population grows is to, by any means necessary, deplete the population and then hoard the resources for themselves.
And I don't think anyone knew Stalin was trying to kill his population until after it happened, or Mao until after it happened. Like, you don't know when it's coming. Otherwise, you stop it. You prevent it.
Exactly. This is what people don't understand.
But people also are really bad at stopping things.
They're good at running
The
and
river
hiding.
flows in one direction.
People are really, again, I hate to keep referring back to the past 2.5 years we've just lived through, but I can't think of a more blatant and in-your-face example of people not stopping things when there's a clear and simple opportunity.
Because tribalism, I think people have a natural tendency towards resistance. We have sports because they want to fight against something.
I think it's also just fear.
With the
Most
last 2
people are
years,
scared.
there's such an easy way to resist.
Yeah. And people didn't do it.
They still aren't doing it.
Ian makes a good point, though. When I was younger, I used to complain that people cared about sports more than politics. And I didn't understand why we have these stories about, Bush and the invasion of Iraq, and then you get Obama. And I'm like, I wish people cared more about this than, say, like the Packers or whatever. And now I'm understanding exactly why why it was good that we had sports. People don't care or want to understand. They want tribal conflict. And so while they're saying, I choose, because no one forces you to do this. They say, I'd rather watch the baseball game and argue with my friends about who's better at baseball. And then I say, well, I care a whole lot about the conflict, so I'm going to pay attention to that. It actually works out really well that the people who aren't smart enough or don't want to engage in worldly affairs choose not to, so they're not voting for evil people or being susceptible to demagogues. But once politics became pop culture, now you have people being sucked into the demagoguery of the Democrats, or they argue Donald Trump. But it's the Democrats that are funding Trump-supported candidates while claiming they're the apocalypse. So this is what the Democrats have done. I saw this montage. It was horrifying, where all of the cable news outlets are talking about the January 6th hearings as a season of shows with a season finale. They have made it entertainment to escalate political conflict. To me, like you were saying, Zuby, it sounds like they're doing it on purpose to cause political conflict. I wrote for Newsweek when Raskin included me in his evidence that this is the goal, to drive a wedge, to create escalation. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Come hang out live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Super Chat will even answer some of your questions. If you want to check out the After Hours Censored Show, go to timcast.com and become a member. We put those up Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. They're very funny, not very family friendly. We'll love to see you there. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.